So there's a few more people joining. I'll
Oh,
just let it run for a minute. I like the background.
thank you. I organised my walls especially for you today.
That's perfect.
Yeah, put them in
Um,
good order.
I've moved into a south of France apartment, seaside
Yeah,
apartment, especially
it's good. Yeah, I like
because we
that.
were going to talk about interior design, so I thought I had to up my game a bit. So,
You've done it. You've gone for it.
will you happily sit there all the time, or
No, he'll probably moan about it. He'll have a little. He'll start panting in a minute 'cause it's too hot.
okay? I'm
He'll
going to
be,
get Jean while we're just warming up.
yeah. They can have a
Excellent.
Oh,
So, hi Jessica, thanks for coming. Sorry about the technical hitch.
that's all right. I think it's probably my really old computer, to be honest.
There's some weird bugginess going on, and also I've noticed my internet's pretty poor today, so we'll see. Part of my shoulder keeps disappearing, but I think we'll manage. We'll work through that. Um, it's great. It's a bit different today because most of the people, all of the people really I've spoken to so far, have been animators or director animators, and you kind of overlap into that world as well. Obviously, I'm kind of asking people that I know and have worked with to join this now regular weekly thing that we
Yeah.
do. So yeah, I just wanted to describe. It was funny when I was putting that little kind of promo flyer thing together. I was thinking, it's really easy with most people because it's like Andy Biddle, animator,
Yeah.
through director, but your career's like changed quite a lot, and your job, you have like I counted at least 4 job titles.
Yeah, that's the
Um,
difficult thing when people say, "What do you do?" It's like, ah.
I was going to ask you, is that tricky? Because then you sort of start
Yeah,
describing like lots of things that you do instead of
it-
just saying, "Well, I'm this."
yeah. When I mean, even just saying like textile artist, I think people probably think I design prints and things, and which I don't, or make blankets or something like that. So it's always, you can't really say, "Oh, I knit
Yeah,
dinners and things." So it is a really difficult one. So normally I kind of go down the route of interior design and artist, and kind of say making things for commercials, editorial, all sorts of things really. But it's such a difficult question because
yeah.
it is so broad.
So I've got textile artist, I've got kind of designer, textile artist, prop stylist, and interior designer. Probably more than that, right?
Yeah, because where it's so broad, I kind of with different jobs. So quite often, if I get a job in, that's like an editorial job or something like that. Quite often I'll just art direct it as well, and that's just almost that's just part of it. Even though I'm designing and making, sometimes I have an art director which is on board that would just say, "Can you just make this?" But other times I'll be art directing as well, prop styling. So yeah, these days it's textile artist, interior designer, and I just go with that.
It seems like you've kind of really struck a chord because you've been featured in loads of magazines and, however you describe what you do, it seems to be really kind of accessible and something that people instantly take a liking to. I was showing one of my daughters some of the things you were doing on your website. People react to it really positively, and she just kind of started laughing at some of the knitted food and stuff that you've done. It just has, a really playful kind of instant
That's really nice.
reaction from people.
That's really nice to hear, because sometimes when you're making things and you're in the studio, you're on your own, you're making stuff all the time. And for example, like the job that I did for Stylist, where I did the cover for them, which was some knitted food. It was like knitted beans on toast and things like that. And when I did that job, I was kind of, I make it in my studio, it's just me. And then you forget, of the circulation of that's huge. So thousands of people see it. And I was so surprised the amount of emails I got and things over. I mean, I still get jobs from that one now, from that particular project, but it's so lovely that so many people were saying it made me feel this, it made me feel that. And I think at the end of the day, art is it's all about the emotion that it evokes, and it's just feeling something, and it doesn't necessarily have to be positive or negative. It's causing a reaction in somebody, and which I think is really, really nice, because some people think it's funny, some people think it's a bit weird and a bit like, I've had people before saying like, oh, it just creeps me out, like the knitted food, and said it like puts them on edge because they think about chewing the wool. And it's just really interesting to hear what people say about it, because yeah, when you're on your own in the studio making, you forget that it's going out there and so many people see it. So it's nice to hear that.
It'd be good to sort of jump back to how you began your process and how you started your kind of career, because you've, like I say, you've gone through quite a few different processes and experimented with different techniques. And where did you train, for instance?
I studied, I did a degree in fashion at Bournemouth Arts Institute. It was one of those, I started the course because, you know, at that age, you need to make a choice and you do something, you don't really know what you want to do. I mean, now I think, oh, I wish I did model making or something like that, but I don't think I would have got to where I am now. I would have taken a very different route. So I did fashion, and you know, I had a great time on the course, but I didn't necessarily learn that much. But whilst I was there, some people went down, like, it was fashion studies, so it was like a graphic design route and the more traditional kind of pattern cutting side of things. So I did that route and ended up making props and things for like fashion shoots, and just making things for like little, you know, editorial projects and things like that. So went down that route, started making things out of paper, and whilst I was at uni, started contacting like magazines and things like that and said, do you need anything made? And started to get jobs here and there, just, you know, just small jobs. But as I started to get projects in, which was really great when I was at uni, I also started to make accessories and things as well, and I'd make like paper props to go with the accessories. And that weirdly ended up really the accessories ended up taking off. And I mean, from a financial perspective, it's definitely not the most profitable thing I've ever done in my life. I was spending hours making these things, and it got me press and it got me exposure and it got me lots of contacts, which when you're at uni is great, because, you know, it's a bonus really to be getting out there while still studying. And I started selling my accessories and things in Selfridges and Kabiri and a few other independent boutiques. And as I got into those shops, I kind of started to say, you know, can I do a window display for you or something like that? And you know, a few said, yeah, you can have, you know, corners to a display. And I was just kept myself really busy doing projects like that. And initially, so it was the accessories and paper props, and then when I graduated I was still doing accessories, because they're all handmade. It was taking a lot of time and not a huge amount of profit. And then I found that I started to get more and more people getting in touch, asking me to do jobs, but then it was very much competitive on price, and if I wouldn't do it cheap enough, they'd just ask the next person. And I got to the point where I was like, because I really loved the craft, it just felt a bit crap, kind of thinking, okay, this is just price based, not necessarily skill based. So I decided, okay, I'm going to try and niche and find something else I can do. You know, I had a bit of experience sewing, so decided, it was on a whim really, decided to teach myself to knit. Bought a knitting machine, never used one before, but I thought, okay, if I'm spending £1,000 on a knitting machine,
How much?
I've 1,000 on knitting machine.
Was there anyone you were looking at specifically and thinking that's the kind of work I want to make, or were you just diving in and thinking I'm going to experiment?
Stupidity.
Right.
There was nothing like, oh, so this person's doing that, they're really inspiring to me. There were lots of artists and designers that inspired me, but nobody working in that medium. And it was a bit of, I say it's stupid, to be honest, it was a bit of a practical decision, because when I decided, you know, let's try making fabric stuff instead, I was then going out to buy fabrics and things, and I was like, actually really expensive to buy the materials. I thought, how can I make my own? And thought, I buy a knitting machine, I can, you know, make my own. Then you've got the initial outlay, and wool is, you know, that actually is quite expensive, but it was cheaper than buying loads and loads of fabric, or would be in the long.
It sounds like, because it kind of makes me think, because I did a degree in fine art and it's not something I sort of pursued afterwards. But I went into, it was a weird, you know, in some respects I think, oh, I should have done a film course or an animation course or a cinematography course, and all the things that you sort of grow and gravitate towards as you get more experience and you find slowly what are the things you want to do.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, I don't regret doing that, because it's sort of feeds into what I do now, I think, and all of that experience, nothing's wasted in that experience. So do you kind of feel the same in that respect, that you may have chosen like not the right thing, but it still pushed you in the right direction?
Change it. Yeah, exactly the same, because I think, because I do a lot of model making that's kind of combined with the textile work, you know, although I say, oh, I wish I did model making, I don't think I'd be doing what I'm doing now if I had done model making. Because I think, because I didn't know how to do it and I was making it up as I went along, I took probably a completely different route to what a model maker would.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know what I was doing. Whereas if I'd done a model making degree, I would have then gone on and done, you know, done an internship for, you know, somewhere that did model making for 6 months and then ended up staying there. Whereas I went out on my own straight away. I really did just make it up as I went along. And I think that's something which I'm probably, at the time, I thought, you know, this is a really stupid idea and I should have studied this, that, and the other. But like you say, now looking back, I think, no, it was the right thing to do. And I don't, sometimes I think you don't know until you start doing something. It's like you need to take that first step to then work out what the next thing is you want to do.
There's no right way into any of these careers, right? I mean, we've heard from 3 or 4 animators and they've all had age 13 or 14, like watching certain programs. This is what I definitely want to do from now on. Whereas, you know, you and I and other people have sort of slowly evolved through different creative things and found something that we're particularly passionate about. But there's no correct journey, is there? There's no one place.
The funny thing is I, looking back, I think I probably, well, I think deep down I knew what I wanted to do, but I just didn't actually acknowledge it. From really young, I was completely obsessed with Wallace and Gromit. So when I found out I was working with you,
should have been an animator then.
I know, when you were on Chicken Run and I found out that you're doing Dorset cereal, I was like, oh God, I can't meet him. You know, he's just I was starstruck, Malcolm. But I loved all of the Wallace
I don't know what to say about that.
And yeah, I was really into that, and I used to, and I think it's almost like I thought, well, you know, that's just something I like, and then you kind of push that to one side, and then years later you're like, oh no, hang on, that was the stuff I was always really interested in. But you just kind of, it's almost like if you don't know that could be a career route, you don't even consider it. It's interesting. It kind of like came back later.
I just wanted to dig out, I've got some stills because I just thought it'd be good to show people some of the things you do. So I'm going to share my screen if you just bear with me a sec. So I've just got a few stills here to scroll through. So those first 3 are those hand embroideries.
Yeah.
And I just I wanted to ask you, what, when you see, because like you know, I said to you the other day, my wife teaches garden history, so we go around, there's a lot of incredible kind of textiles and fabrics when you go around to these country houses, and embroidery I totally associate with, you know, beautiful kind of flower designs and plants and all those amazing kind of, and I really love the idea that you just had like a piece of bacon and a piece of broccoli and a banana.
And that was exactly it. Of like,
how did those come about?
If these were just self-initiated ones, and it's exactly kind of what you're saying. It's like with hand embroidery, so much of it is like, you know, it might be on like a blouse or something. It's very feminine, and it's always a very feminine subject or something that's delicate or an animal, whatever it might be. And I just really liked the idea of like how much beauty there is in something that's kind of like a rotting banana. It's quite amazing when you look at the actual pattern, and it's something that's natural as well. And I just thought, to spend time on something very ordinary and something that's normally a bit like, oh, bacon, oh, meat. When you look at it, it's kind of like the colours are quite amazing. And I just thought it'd be really interesting to actually put that into stitch, and because it is a really time consuming process. And you know, I just thought it'd be an interesting angle to almost something very normal, very everyday that wouldn't normally be seen in that context.
What do those represent in time, one of those?
I don't
Hard
know.
to say.
I'd say the bacon was probably about 10 days. Yeah, about 10 days-ish. I made them quite a long time ago now. In the region of 10 days.
You're not doing it from life, though. You're not watching a piece of bacon go off. You're doing it from a photo, right?
No, I'll do it from a photo. So I'll photograph it, light it, and then do it from that. But there's an idea. It'd change every day, wouldn't it?
That would be introducing more green thread as you go along.
Yeah, exactly.
These I love, the kind of fast food series with the hot dog.
Yeah, so the first one I ever did was the burger one that you had up on the screen earlier.
That one?
Yeah, that's the one. That was the first one, and it was just like an idea I had, and I spoke to a food photographer, David Sykes, that I've worked with. We've worked together loads, and especially since doing these, we've worked together a lot more. And we said, you know, I said, are you up for shooting it? And kind of met up and worked on like ideas for the set together. And we did a series of 3 initially, and that was picked up by This Is Colossal and It's Nice That, and a few other big blogs, and it just went crazy after that. We got a few commissions out of it, and I mean, still now stuff comes up off of the back of those, and I think that's one of the really, for anybody kind of starting out in the industry or doing anything similar to this, I would say my self-initiated work has got me more work than anything else. And I think when you've got the time, just use it to make stuff. Because I think whilst you're doing it, there's been so many times when I've been like, oh, you know, self-initiated, I should be doing paid work, this, that, and the other. But I did those years ago now, and I still get work from them now. In the fry up that we did as well, the hot dog, might have been another one. But yeah, we did quite a few, and then off the back of these, we got the stylist one. So we got that project. That was the one that was on the stylist cover, and that's probably the job that I've got which has led on to the most projects and exposure. So they featured me on their work life page as well, which I was just talking about, you know, what I do in the studio, my day to day. It was meant to go out like 3 different times and kept getting delayed and all of this. So when it finally went out, it was such an anticlimax, and I was like, okay, well, that didn't really, whatever. And then within a few weeks, it went crazy. So you just never know.
How did you get involved with David Sykes, because the photographer? Because I've had a look at his website, and it's just
it's
really
great, isn't it?
astonishing, brilliant work.
Yeah, I can't remember. I think he emailed me just to see. Yeah, I think he just sent me an email one day to see if I would want to shoot something together. He'd seen some of my work and said, "Would you be up for doing something?" And then we just met up for a coffee one day, and we're like, "Yep, we'll do something soon." And then when I started making the knitted burger, I was like, "Oh, what about shooting this one?" And then it just went from there, really. But that's something which I don't do it so much now because I'm not in London. But when I was in London, and especially in the early days, was just meeting up with people, and I met up with so many photographers and other designers and things like that. And you just meet for coffee, and you think you don't know what will come from it, but it's so nice to talk to other creatives, and especially like for me and David, when we work together now, we just know how each other work, and it's so easy because we've worked together so many times.
And I'm just fascinated by why you chose like the fast food particularly, because it seems, I mean, I guess my take on it is you chosen like the most disposable and throwaway, you know, worthless kind of food, but it's become kind of elevated in this form.
Yeah, and it's similar to with the embroideries. You know, that idea of something,
Yeah.
embroidering something which is kind of seen as that, you know, ugly, or something that's ready for the bin or whatever. And it's a similar thing of almost using these materials and taking time to carve and craft it for something that you could buy the real thing for 99p in McDonald's or wherever.
Yeah.
So that kind of just, and it's kind of, I think I quite like doing the kind of fast food type of thing, because it's just adding a bit of humour to it.
Yeah.
I never want my work to be taken too like seriously, and it's not too sensible and stuff. So yeah, that's kind of why I started with that anyway, was that the whole disposable aspect of it.
So you did all this self-initiated work, and sounds like you're mostly working on your own, but how did you make the transition into kind of working, I don't know how the timeline goes, but working with film and video and getting involved in that?
I think it was a combination of doing a lot of self-initiated work and also contacting production companies, and like I did that a lot. And I'm very much a believer in, you know, don't ask, don't get, and just contacting people and saying, this is the kind of stuff I make. Do you want to take a look at it? Can I pop in and see you? Just being a little bit annoying, really. And then in the end, people going, yes, fine, come in, we'll have a coffee. And that is how I got most of my jobs. I think Dorset Cereals that we worked on together, I'm pretty sure I emailed Nexus and just said, this is the stuff I make if you ever need anything for any animations. But I would look at production companies that work on animations and things that, you know, lots of handcrafted sets, puppets, things like that. So I wouldn't just email like, okay, here's one, here's another one. It would always be production companies producing that kind of handcrafted aesthetic, like animations and things.
Yeah, I remember looking at the Nexus website particularly and going, "Oh my
Yeah.
God, there's so much brilliant work on there." And there wasn't much stock frame on there. But it's funny, like when you look back and see, I want to be doing kind of more of that kind of thing, and how do I find that, and how do I get into it?
Yeah, it is, and it's kind of like, I think also something. Sometimes it's a good marker, like talking about this now, it's like, oh, you realize how far you've come. It's not often you stop to review and be like, oh, hang on, I was cold calling these people and I actually got those jobs. And I think that's something that all of us are guilty of. It's like you don't actually acknowledge how far you've come, and that you're like, oh, I did get to work on something like that. Whereas when you're starting out, you think, oh, how do I get in there? And
Yeah, it takes time and persistence, and especially with animation, and it takes so long to build up a show reel, because you work on a film for 2 years and you just get like a handful of shots out of it.
The long
so
way.
The Nexus thing's good, because that was the Dorset Cereals job, which I wanted to come on to. How did you get involved with that?
I think I was thinking about this yesterday. I think I probably just emailed Nexus to say, can I work with you on something? And I've got a feeling they said they didn't have anything. And then a couple of weeks later, they said, we've got this quick turnaround project. Do you want to do it? And it just went, I think it was just right place, right time. That Dorset Cereals cropped up after that, which I loved that project. I think that was my first project, which I felt was really me and really just working how I wanted to work. And so even now, that's one of my favourite projects. It was a really nice one.
Good morning, Britain. You're listening to Dorset AM. It's 6:32. Time to get up and shake a tail feather. Let's rock these woods.
Morning.
Oh, morning.
Dorset Cereals. Life begins at breakfast.
Still great. Can you tell me, so when you got involved, what was the kind of brief? You're making the puppets, which was that a first for you?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I'm just trying to think. Yeah, I think anything like that I'd done before was probably just kind of small scale. That was the biggest thing, the first TV thing I think I'd done. But yeah, that was a really nice one. So the director was Conor Finnegan, and I got to work with him quite closely, which was great. I think he was living in Ireland, but he was over in London just for the project, and worked quite closely with him. So he did the character designs, and so they were just 2D, and I kind of interpreted them into 3D. And it was quite a quick turnaround run. I think we probably had about 3 weeks to make about 18 puppets. And
I saw some notes on the Nexus website, and I think it was even less time than that, possibly.
Oh, really? Was it?
It said on the website that it was, they kind of described the brief from their point of view, and it was, I think it said you had a tight enough schedule for 2 weeks for model and character maker Jessica Dance to create all 18 characters, which when I read that sounded terrifying. I had no idea.
And it's because I'd never done anything like that either. I, proper thinking I have no idea what I'm doing. But yeah, luckily Conor was really cool, and it was good to just be able to be like, I've just made this, can you come and have a look at it? And he'd pop in, and Nexus were just around the corner from my studio as well, so they would pop in. So that kept things moving really quickly. But yeah, it was a case of I got sent the 2D sketches, and then I sort of made them into 3D, and I carved the foundations out of styrofoam and would just send them shots of puppets from every angle, and Conor would either pop in and feedback or do it over email. But it had to be super quick, but then at the same time, I think both me and Conor are perfectionists, so it was a case of like, oh, we just need to tweak this a bit. And I remember the mice seemed to be ever multiplying. I can't remember how many mice there were.
There were loads of them, yeah.
So many.
I can't remember.
But yeah, I remember they were the trickiest. But yeah, so that was, it's kind of nice in a way sometimes when it's a quick turnaround, because you find you get really good at prioritizing, whereas sometimes when you've got too much time, and lots of people involved, there can be so many rounds of feedback that can kind of just be, when you've got a time focus, I think that really helps, because you know, we got through it pretty quick, and there were changes and amendments and things, but it was done at the right point. So it was, for example, I think, so on that one where it says no change since and that was really good to just be, you know, sending them that, and then they would come back and be like, you know, make these tweaks, and we got pretty quick in the end. I think because we had to, but it was good. So
the wrong way around. I'm just dipping through a few stills that I've got here. That there's some kind of screen grabs, but they're mixed in with some of the making of stuff as well. Yeah. So some of these are yours, I think, and some are some of the things that Connor sent me.
Yeah, it was quite a nice way to work, to be honest. It was. I
love this page as well. Just those are Connor's.
That's what I based all of my. That's what I had as my starting point. But Connor's characters are really nice. So just that's always great when you're working with such a good designer. Anyway, you know, he's a great character designer. So much of the hard work was already done, because those drawings are great. Yeah.
And how was it? I'm just going to stop sharing so I can see you again, because it's a bit disconcerting. How do you, was it difficult, because you'd made stuff before, but then you were making puppets, and this of course was like puppeteered rather than stock frame. So was it, there were practical kind of considerations that maybe you hadn't come across before?
Yeah, so I think the rabbit, I think a lot of them were on like these little wheelie things that Connor kind of constructed. So it was working out ways to kind of fix those on so that it was going to be secure, and if it needs to be adjusted, it could. So for example, it was, I think I put like metal plates and things in the bottom of the styrofoam figure. So it's factoring that in, because quite often for still life stuff, you can just make it, you can have a back to it, prop it up, whatever. But with moving image, you have to consider the fact you're going to see the back, something an armature might have to be fixed, or just something might have to be fixed into it. So that's, I think it's always at the point when you, before making, to come up with that stuff, because it's so much harder if you've made something and then you're like, oh, I need to get a metal plate into this or something to fix in. So that was kind of done before I actually started carving. So, but yeah, with animation, there's a lot more practical implications to consider.
I was amazed actually, because when Connor had them and he was like wheeling them on little kind of cam shapes, so they'd go up and down, I was like, is that really going to work? Is it that's how simple this is going to be? Because I mean, I've done a few puppeteer jobs, but not very kind of spaced out and irregularly. And I kind of got the whole thing. They were going to add beaks and blinks and so on in post, but there were some of the physical puppeteering things that I was like, the low techness of it was just awesome. I loved it.
It really was. I'm sure one of them, like, he couldn't quite get the jump right or something, so he just added a little bit of like plasticine or something to the wheel. So it had that little, he just wanted to tweak the hop. But yeah, he's like really, really nice to work with. So, and I really like that he's so resourceful. It's not like, you know, sometimes it's a case of, oh, you just throw money at it and that fixes the problem. But with Connor, he's like, no, we'll get a bit of plasticine.
Yeah. I'm gonna play the behind the scenes, because that's quite cool, because that shows some of those things that we're talking about.
We asked Sunshine to have a look at some creative concepts for our new TV ad, which was very much about life begins at breakfast.
We had a chat with Nexus, and Connor's work was shown to us. It was just a beautiful marriage of craft, which is something that Dorset's so well known for.
It's cool to get to design so many characters, just the amount of detail, the textures, and all handmade.
CGI never seemed right to put Dorset out, because it would have suddenly felt artificial and fake. But this beautiful technique of actually building everything out of real materials and wool was a really good way of bringing it to life.
Got given storyboards that were very graphic, and it pretty much matches it identically. Connor said to make it like this, and we made it like that 100%.
It's quite nice to work with Connor, as he has a very clear idea in his head, and I think he's a bit of a perfectionist. You know, it's all very well and good making the little characters and getting them looking nice, but it's thinking about the practicalities of how they will actually work when they're being animated and they need to be all rigged up and good to go.
morning, Britain. You're listening to
It's
Dorset
the
AM.
dawn
It's
chorus.
6:32
There's
time
Mike,
to
he's
get
a
up and shake
DJ.
a tail feather.
He kind of wakes up all the animals.
Kind of the vision of Good Morning Vietnam, this kind of animated bird who's just playing tunes and everyone's getting up and we're cutting our way to squirrels and mice.
It had to all be something that you could see in Dorset, so foxes, hedgehogs, that kind of thing, and bringing them to life with sort of human characteristics.
It was a 2-day shoot, loads of characters doing fun stuff, which is a lot, but we got it all in. I'm really happy with how everything turned out. It's nice to come back with Nexus and work with all the same people again, and genuinely, I'm delighted.
I remember that shoot. I don't know you. So you were there on the shoot though, right? Weren't you?
Yeah, it wasn't that one. Yeah.
It was really frenetic because it was only 2 days and there was no pre-light. So
Yeah.
we literally like dived in and threw it all together as quickly.
Really long days, weren't they?
And they were long days, yeah. And we kind of knew that from the start, just because it was a low budget kind of job and something that everyone wanted to do. So it was sometimes you kind of make those sacrifices, and yeah, that's the way things are, isn't it? Sometimes.
And I think everyone's in it for the same. Everyone knew it was going to be a really nice project. And I think that's why it works so well. It's
yeah, and I kind of hoped that there was an idea that it might turn into a little series of things where you saw another episode of those characters, that there was a lot more in there that they could have.
I feel like there was,
they could have done with it, but sadly not. But that was Dorset's first commercial. I don't know if I've never seen anything
I
else
haven't seen one since either. No.
that they've done. So
No.
there we slaved over it and gave it our best, and then it didn't come back to us.
No.
The text Santa job was the following Christmas, I think, 2015.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
And that job was probably one of the maddest jobs I've ever done. Dorset was just, a really lovely job, a low budget job, a quick sort of turnaround, but satisfying and a nice thing to have done. Text Santa, the knitted ad break was like something that we didn't even know was feasible.
I mean, I still don't know how that actually. I don't know how it all got done in time, because that was. I don't know what the overall time frame was, including post. But you said there wasn't much post on it in the end, was there?
I mean, there wasn't like heavy post on it. I think there was quite a lot to do, like with de-rigging and cleanup, but there weren't additional kind of elements because it all had to be kind of done in camera. So just to go back to the start point to explain, I'm just gonna. Oh, that's good timing. Tobias has just turned up.
Yeah.
He might have to chip in, and I was looking up because I think looking at the call sheet, it took 8 days to shoot. It was 3 minutes 20 worth of animation, which is a scary amount to do in that time. Yeah. It's getting towards like more series speed kind of stock frame animation than commercial. So the idea was ITV had their knitted Text Santa charity night, I think around the 18th of December every year, where they raise money for charity. And this year, 2015, they wanted to do something different and make a whole commercial break out of knitted animation. And they wanted to emulate existing commercials and copy, like frame by frame, commercials that are already on air or about to go out. And so they had to, I think it was quite a big deal to kind of negotiate and get sign off with all these different brands to kind of go ahead with it. So all that process was bubbling along for a long time. So it got to the point where there wasn't really much time left. And in the ideal world, we would have started shooting weeks and weeks before we did. Because I looked at the call sheets and we were shooting in November and it was out December the 18th. There was only like a few days to get all the post.
And it just aired the once, didn't it?
So it went out during that whole evening. It went out for one time only, and I think it was viewed by like 4 or 5 million people, which was seen to be like a huge sort of success. So yeah, it was a really kind of odd one-off process, and I I mean, I got involved really early because I was talking to a producer at ITV, and they really wanted to do it in stock frame, but they needed to kind of connect with people that knew how to do it and who to talk to and who could produce it and who could work on it. So I remember actually kind of hearing about it, and then I went on, I think it must have been like the late October half term. I was away and I got a phone call, and it was like, all systems go, it's going to happen. It was like, oh, I've kind of forgotten about this because we talked about it. It went away.
Yeah.
And then it was like all hell was going to break out, because it was like, how do we get to make these puppets? How do we get to make these sets? Giving ourselves, enough time to actually shoot it and produce it and finish it and air it and all the rest of it. So I guess because you'd worked with Janet before on Dorset, did she initiate that contact with you?
Yeah, she contacted me and just said, we need loads of knitted props making. And I was like, yeah, when do you need it? And I think she said something like, I think I had 8 days or something like that. Wow. And I said, oh, can you send me over like the designs of what you need? And she was like, just watch these ads. We've got someone making the puppets. So the ads were essentially like the blueprint of what I needed to make. It was all there for me to reference. I think I got some sketches from Tobias maybe. And yeah, she was just like, this is when we need it. Can you do it? And I always remember Janet saying, like, it was so weird. She went, I just found it so strange. I kept asking people for more and more stuff. And she said, I was expecting someone to say no at some point. And she said, and nobody did. Everyone just kept saying yes. Normally with commercial stuff, you're doing Christmas in, well, depending, but sometimes like August, September.
Yeah, so, and November.
Yeah, it was crazy. But I don't know how much time I had in the end. It wasn't long. But yeah, she sent me a list of everything she wanted making. And I mean, I didn't really have much contact with anybody on that one. I think I spoke to Tobias a bit, but I think everyone was just so busy. It was quite I wasn't on the shoot either. I dropped the stuff off at the studio, and that was it. I think it was, and then obviously met up with everyone again at the event. I can't remember what it was, just like get together, wasn't it? Just before Christmas.
They had like a launch for ITV. They showed it in their smart headquarters in Gray's Inn Road, and had a bit of a sort of celebration pre-launch drinks thing, which was fun, which was good. I was quite tempted. I went on a special mission that night because I'll show people the whole thing in a second, but at the beginning, what was really nice is not only did we do the whole ad break, but there was that little kind of trailer featuring the pug at the beginning to introduce it. And I think we shot that the Monday after the main shoot at Clapham Road. And my special mission was to try and steal that pug that night. Because as many of you know, my wife is obsessed with pugs. So she said, don't come back if you haven't got that pug in your bag. But
it's over if you don't bring the pug back.
I'm going to find that ad for us, because it'd be nice to talk about it having shown everyone else.
And now, in celebration of Text Santa and Christmas Jumper Day, here's something to feel warm and fuzzy about. A very special ad break.
I'll keep you safe. Try hard to concentrate. Hold out your hand. Can you feel the weight of it? The sound of the branches breaking under your feet. You are an artist, and your heart is your masterpiece. And I'll keep it safe.
Wow, look, it's a live cheetah. She's fast and dangerous. But do you know what's faster? When you download with BT Infinity. It's so fast. Is this safe?
It's perfectly safe. Oh gosh, do something.
Distract it. It's gonna eat me.
I've got meat! I've got meat!
Do I just stand still?
BT Infinity fibre optic broadband offers faster download speeds than Sky.
Everything changes but you. We're 1,000 miles apart, but you know I love you.
Over time, your mattress goes through a lot. That's why at Dreams, for a better night's sleep, we recommend you replace it every 8 years. And to help you remember, Dreams mattresses now come with a delivered on date. Replace every 8 at Dreams, because your sleep matters.
Little man, when you stand by my side, then I know I don't have to hide from anyone.
We're ready. So when you order a DFS sofa, it'll be handmade for you in the fabric and finish of your choice. DFS.
Enjoy the wonders of a warm and working home this Christmas with one-off boiler repairs starting from £79, whether you're a customer or not. British Gas, helping you look after your home.
It's still, it just makes me laugh because I think they're, I mean, I would say this, but I think they're better than the actual original adverts. Because some of those commercials are quite, you know, like how many times have you seen DFS adverts and the beds ones, and then they're like, without being too rude, they're an instant sort of turn off, right? You've just seen them, to see them in knitted world just makes them much more entertaining and brilliant somehow. Yeah, I just wanted to credit all the, I mean, the animation, the animators we had on it, Frey, Carmen, Max, Michael, Hughes, Adam, Tobias did some shots, I think, as well. So we had 5 animators plus Tobias. Me and Jamie Kennelly was also lighting a couple of the sets, which was great. It's actually brilliant to have another cameraman that I could split the work with.
Yeah.
So he did a great job. Tim and Robin helping me light. It was just like, I think what was nice about it was like going back to sort of old school animation, in that you didn't really have time to have a big chat and a committee and you just had to just get on with it as quickly as possible.
And I think sometimes that's when you get the best results, is like you go with your gut,
Yeah.
and like you say, there isn't a committee about each.
We're literally like throwing sets together out of bits of cloth and getting them ready as fast as we could. Just describe, because the workload was split a bit, wasn't it? McKinnon Saunders did.
McKinnon Saunders did all the puppets.
Yeah.
So they worked on all of those, and so I was doing. I didn't do all of the backgrounds. I think they probably did some of those. I think some might have just been made kind of with wool on the day, because I'm sure there was a load of charity.
Well, Andy Farrago did a lot of work, whose company in Manchester. He built a lot of the sets, or all of the sets, really quickly. I think McKinnon Saunders did the puppets, and then so was most of your stuff props rather than puppets this time?
Exactly, yeah. So I didn't do any of the puppets. It was like props and all the kind of little details, really. So things like the faster down, and the most complicated one was probably the faster download speed thing that drops down on the BT one.
Yeah.
That was all knitted. That was, I think I did that in tarsia, which is kind of like a plaiting technique. And even though I did it on on more weaving than plaiting, but even though I did it on a knitting machine, it's still really time consuming, and because it's small,
Yeah.
When you're doing anything that's like text or something like that, it's better if it's bigger because you can get more curves and things in and more detail in. So that was one of the most complex pieces. But yeah, I made all of like the smaller elements. So it was like the plants, the lamps, like the little home hub things, the beds, and the soft furnishing stuff, and all the tools for DFS. But yeah, so I made something for all of them.
Did you make the sparks that came out of the machinery? Because that was like, I couldn't believe when we had to actually animate. How do you animate sparks out of wool?
Yeah, that was just tiny little cut up as a wool, wasn't it? I forgot about that. But yeah, they were like really little. Yeah, I have no idea how you did that.
I remember saying to Tobias, I don't really understand how you're gonna.
Yeah, like, can we just do this space?
But then I looked at this. He did. I think Tobias might have done that shot. I might be wrong. I looked after, like, well, he just did it. It was fine.
Yeah, yeah, it just happened somehow, like most of it.
I've got some stills here that I'm going to show you because I just got my hands on these recently. I'd never seen them before. There you go.
I haven't seen these either.
So a few of these, only like 4 or 5 of these were used for the creative review article. There's we had Ezra Sumner doing his immaculate scheduling boards, which was very useful, I have to say. Yeah. Janet, Christoph, and Carmen, I think, working out how to do some shots. I think that's Richard rigging, Frey animating nationwide, which I really love that one.
Oh, that was one of the trickiest ones actually, was the nationwide logo, knitting that.
Yeah. I watched that original commercial today and it's such a cheesy ad, but I really love the stock frame version of it.
Yeah.
Much better. And then that was hilarious as well with the leopard. Is it a leopard? Cheetah?
So.
Something like that. Max animating your faster download beads prop.
Yeah, so it's like those backgrounds I knitted as well. Tiny little hub, and it was all those little bits.
That was one difficult thing because there was so little time. The sets were actually tiny. There was no. I mean, we used every single millimeter that we could.
I remember that one in particular. I remember Janet being like, "Can you just do it bigger than it needs to be?" But I can only knit so wide on my knitting machine, so it's a case of knitting it, washing it, and trying to stretch it
out. Thinking about how the hell am I going to light?
How did I get into this?
How am I going to make the penguin's lantern light up when it's made of wool? But we did it. Set dressing. Robin checking his phone. Jamie. Tobias. Carmen. That set was one of the most difficult. The beds one, because the original ad had that kind of time lapse transitions through time to show the passing of, you're supposed to replace your bed every 8 years. So there was, I think we relit that set, 6 or 7 times.
Yeah.
Which was tricky. Because we were just trying to maximize how can we get as much animator time on these sets. And there's a little setup time to kind of hold them up, but that was the hardest set for setup. And that set also had motion control on it, which repeated the move throughout those transitions, which also added a lot of extra time into that. And also loved the British Gas penguin, which many of you will know was a CG animated job. But again, I think the knitted one's got the edge.
Yeah.
I think they should have switched into knitted from then on. Oh, there you go. Here's some of your props. I love that.
Looking at it just makes me think of late nights.
That's
When I
it.
look back, I'm just like, all-nighters making tiny eggs.
Well, it's weird because it'll bring back something different to you then.
Yeah. And that some of that stuff actually went into Liberty. They had in their store, I think they were supporting Tech Santa, and they had a window display. So I remember at the end of the project, Janet being like, do you want to speak to the guys at Liberty and knit the ITV logo and make some more stuff? And I was like, somehow we did it. So yeah, they just had a window display advertising the it was kind of
and did they put that
yes,
Textile
that
logo
window with the ITV logo as well. So yeah, that was a little add-on.
Yeah, you can hear my naughty dog barking. And I love the pug, as I said.
I've never seen this.
That's the end of my selection.
So good.
Given that your work's changed so much, and you've tried so many different techniques, and it seems part and parcel of your process that you must be like fascinated by a certain thing and then get drawn into a new area that takes you in a different direction. Is that just the way things are going to be, do you think, in the next, if you look ahead for another kind of 5 or 10 years, if you can? How do you, where are you going to go from here?
Well, I think the thing that ties my work together is the craftsmanship throughout. Is that's initially, that's how I got into what it is that I'm doing now. Is everything that I do, it's kind of revolves around craft and design. So I think I will always have that in my work, and I've started to move into interiors now. So from doing making things for window displays, I've started to move into interior design. And I thought initially, like, okay, I do interiors and I'll phase out the textile art stuff and commercials and things. But then I realised I do still really love doing it. And I think for me, it's a case of just choosing the right jobs now, rather than, there's been so many times before in the past. And I think we all do it, of saying yes to jobs which really either weren't right, or it was, just doesn't sit right, and you do it, and then afterwards you kind of feel like, oh. But yeah. I think now I'm kind of at the point where luckily, like, nearly all of my clients are so nice, and I've been asked to work on some really good projects, and I think I'm going to continue to do the ones that just feel right, and do more of the interiors work as well. Yeah. So I don't think I'll ever stop doing the model making.
So you don't jettison like things along the way. You just keep broadening out and do the things you want to do.
And I think it's like what I was saying earlier, really. It's like saying yes to things and just doing things. I find you learn so much working in that way. And the way I've worked in the last couple of years, I think, has really evolved. Is, I was really focused on textile art stuff, and I used to be very very protective over it, to be honest. And I spent so long learning the craft and creating my own little niche. And now I'm kind of at that point where I don't really know what changed, but I suddenly became quite like, actually, people want to see it, people want to share it, people want to understand. And I very much used to be part of I had quite I suppose it was quite a scarcity kind of mindset. Is I thought, oh, if I share my process, people are going to copy me and this, that, and the other. And
don't you think that's just growing in confidence and experience that you're happy to share stuff with people?
Yeah, and it just feels so much better as well, because it's, the last year or so, 2 years, I've had quite a lot of students contact me and ask me questions and things, and it's like, it's actually just really nice to help people if you can. It's like, I'm not doing the most important job in the world or anything like that, but it's like, if I can help somebody that's trying to figure out what they're going to do, and setting up a business and in the creative industry and things like that, it's like I have made a lot of mistakes, and I've done so many different things that I'm really happy now to just share that and be, I never be like, you need to do this, but it's just saying, I did this and this, and I actually found having a part-time job at this point helped, and then not staying there too long is key, and just things like that. And so it's the business side of things as well as actual processes. And I like to think that when you're helping people and putting that out there and sharing, if people enjoy watching your process and how things are made, it's like, I think putting that good energy out there is ultimately a nice thing to do, and it's just I think it just helps. And also it's a much nicer way to work.
The Instagram thing's become so sort of vital to a lot of creative people's output.
Yeah.
Is that just grown kind of organically? Have you learned from just spectating, watching other people use it?
I think I just do what feels right. And it's like, I'm sure there was a time where I was like, oh, okay, you've got to do X amount of posts a week or whatever, and it's like, that just doesn't work for me, because probably like for you work on projects which you might work on something flat out and then it won't be out for 6 months or whatever, so you can't actually share anything. And my work's so inconsistent that I don't always have something to put out. So I never post anything for the sake of being like, oh, I need to keep people like interested, because I think people see straight through that and they just think it's not genuine, and it's just you're posting for the sake of it.
I was going to ask about that. Yeah, so you actually get a fair proportion of work coming through that.
Yeah, I think most of my work comes from that now. I do have an agent, and I get the odd bits through them, but to be honest, I think most of it comes direct, and most of it is I saw this on Instagram and goes from there, which is great, because it might be something that I posted 2 years ago that somebody will see, and it's been it's been quite organic. It's not been like an overnight, oh, I've got 100,000 followers or whatever. I mean, I haven't got that many anyway, but I mean, it's been a very gradual process, and through collaborations and things. I remember I did a project a while ago with John Bergman where I knitted some of his characters, and for that I think he shared some of the images, and projects like that seem to get a lot of people interested, because John Bergman's following, like the fun, playful stuff, and then they check my stuff out, and then you might get a load more followers for that. But it's just been really organic, and I think it's a case of I think just posting when you've got something to say and when you've got something to share, and just putting it out there, because I definitely think there was a time when I kind of thought, oh, what if nobody likes it? And you can really overthink it and almost get too wrapped up in it. And I think there's a very fine line between I don't know how to put it. It's kind of like, I think it can be really helpful, but then I think Instagram can also hinder if you start to kind of, I guess, hinge too much on it. Such a journey, like like what you're asking me of, what do I think I'll be doing for 5-10 years? It's like, if you asked me 5-10 years ago what I'd be doing now, I would just be like, I don't know. Like,
I know it's impossible, really.
It's such a journey, isn't it? And I think that's for that reason, it's like comparing yourself to somebody. It's like you don't know what they've done first, and like how they got to where they are and things. It's like you just keep going and keep trying stuff, really. And I think that's another thing that Instagram is really good for, is like the rapid testing. Is you can get a response so quickly from if you're making something and you think, oh, I wonder if like producers be interested in this, or art directors or art buyers. Make something, put it on Instagram, and you just see the response. And it's like, it's such a quick, free way to gauge what people
actually I do wish I had that, because sometimes I might work on something for months and then realise it's actually awful.
Yeah, it's a bit quicker in
so yeah, I need to start making stuff. I think I'm going to wind things up there. That was so brilliant, Jessica. Thanks for showing us your work and talking about how you developed it and changed things over the years. It's just been fascinating.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Cool.
I'm going to say goodbye from me, but I'm going to leave the call open for a few minutes. If anyone has any questions or wants to chat, then be my guest. So thanks a lot.
Oh, thanks so much. Thanks, Malcolm. See you later. I've just seen that Kyle asked me a question, said, do I have people helping me make stuff? If so, how does that work with being a perfectionist? Not very well, Kyle, if you're still there. So I have had people help me, and I find it really difficult to kind of let go of the control side of things. And sometimes I find the amount of time it takes me to make something, or to show someone how to make something, you kind of go, oh, I might as well do it myself. But because I'm not consistently crazy busy making, it's not like I can have a regular assistant all the time, so I tend to not do it. When I was in London, I had assistants a lot more, but mostly now I pretty much do it myself. But yeah, I'm sure Kyle, being a maker as well, probably is exactly the same.
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Like knowing what to delegate and what things you want to, what things you get precious about and what things you sort of let go.
Exactly, because it's probably the same for you, because all your projects are so different that it's probably really similar to, like, probably on some projects you've got to work out yourself how to make it first, and then you think, I might as well just do it now. I mean, I'm putting words in your mouth, I'm guessing.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it all comes down to time for me. I'm amazed at the time scales that you're talking about, being able to put, like, I don't know, that ITV one, it's insane. So you had like 2 weeks to build those sets.
It might have been less, but yeah, obviously I didn't do the puppets, but yeah, it was a crazy turnaround on that one. And that was, like I said, when Malcolm was going through the pictures, it did just make me think of being really tired when I looked at it, because I was like, just remember making that mattress at like 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, just so tired.
I think there was 5 weeks to make the whole thing to get it finished. So if you think about the build, between lots of different creative people like yourself, Jessica, McKinnon Saunders, Andy Farrago had a massive job to build the sets, the shoot, and then post, and then getting it on air. It was just like, we really thought, I think there was a point with Tobias, we had a meeting or something, we both looked at each other and was like, this isn't going to work really, is it? Because there's not enough time left to, with the best will in the world, there really isn't enough time left to get this done. But somehow it just
happens. It's really
There was a moment when we couldn't find a puppet person to make the puppets, and I remember outside, I was down on the street in the rain with my mobile phone to Janet, and she said, Tobias, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? There must be another puppet person. And we'd sort of exhausted everyone, and I was just like, no. And it almost felt like the project was going to implode.
Yeah.
And I said, well, there's always McKinnon and Saunders, but I'd never thought of them, because if all these individuals had said no because they couldn't do it for the money, I just didn't consider McKinnon and Saunders, because if they're saying no, then a big company like McKinnon and Saunders are definitely going to say no.
Yeah.
I said, well, there's always McKinnon and Saunders. And Janet went, oh, who are they? And I explained. And then she phoned them up and then got back to me an hour later and said, McKinnon and Saunders said yes.
So good.
So
that
was a big relief, wasn't it? That they got on board, because I don't think it would have happened otherwise. Well, we'll say goodbye and tune in next week for another exciting instalment. Thanks, Jessica.
Thanks. See you later.
Take care.
Bye from Wallace.
Bye, Wallace.